I'm Dawn Hill, host of Heart, Mind, and Purpose, a podcast where we explore what it means to live an aligned and wholehearted life. I am a professional counselor with over 25 years of experience and a deep love for meaningful conversation. I bring you honest reflections, soulful questions, and meaningful tools for managing life. Whether you're seeking clarity, connection, or simply a space to breathe, this podcast is here for you. Tune in weekly and join me on the journey.
Welcome to Heart, Mind, and Purpose, where we explore the inner landscape of your own heart, mind, and purpose. Hi, this is Paul Gramercy, producer of today's episode. Today we're talking about your toolbox, not the one in your garage, but the one you carry inside you. Your inner resources, emotional tools, and life strategies you bring into adulthood, relationships, work, and faith.
Maybe your toolbox is full of bright, shiny tools that are untouched or untested, or maybe it's dented and dusty, but packed with well-used, hard-earned wisdom. Some of us were given only one tool, and if that tool is a hammer, then everything and every problem in life is a nail. Wherever you find yourself today, this conversation is for you. Let's open the lid of our toolboxes together and look at what we've been carrying and what other tools we might need to grow forward in life. The toolbox as a metaphor comes from my own personal process. I never knew I had a toolbox, and when I realized I had a toolbox, this was a great way for me to look at how I was navigating life. By the tools in my toolbox, I could understand many things more clearly. When I discovered I had a toolbox, it was a surprise to me, and for the most part, the tools in my box were primarily for survival. At that point in time in my life, I was unaware there was anything else but survival. We all come to our adult lives with a toolbox, whether we know we have one or not. The toolbox ideally should carry healthy and helpful tools for our emotional, relational, behavioral, and spiritual needs. We get these tools from a variety of people and places, which we will explore in today's podcast. So let me start by asking you a question. What if your life came with a toolbox? Not a physical one, but a set of tools inside you, some you've inherited, some you've had to improvise, and some you may not even know how to use. Or maybe no one ever told you that you needed tools for life. We all carry a toolbox most of us never asked for. So how would we know what's inside our toolbox? There are different types of toolboxes, just like there are different types of personalities. So let's look at some of the different types of toolboxes. I'm going to give us 4 examples to work from today because we couldn't cover them all, but I think these are good general description. So up first, we have the trophy toolbox. It's pristine but unused. This toolbox looks impressive, polished, well-stocked, and maybe even inevitable, but the tools inside haven't really been used. They have been handed down or picked up through a life that so far has been relatively smooth, stable, or privileged. You might hear someone from this toolbox say things like, "Life has just always worked out for me," or "I've never really had to struggle to get what I want." These tools include skills, wisdom, or practices which exist, but they haven't been tested. They've never had to be reached for in times of hardship. When life gets hard, and inevitably it does, this person may feel lost or unprepared. Stressors increase, things stop going as they should, and confusion sets in. Questions start like, why isn't life working out as it always has? Why is this so hard? And what am I supposed to do now? This toolbox reflects someone who is just beginning to realize that having tools isn't the same as knowing how or when to use them. The real growth begins when the tools finally come off the shelf and get put to work. Up second is the grindstone kit. This is well used and battered. This toolbox has been shaped by grit, refined by hardship, and worn down by survival. Every tool inside tells a story. Scarred, dented, maybe bent out of shape, but still reliable. These are the tools of someone who's earned every step forward the hard way. They might say things like, "Life has never been easy. No one gives you a hand." Or, "I'm a self-made person. If you fall, you get back up." And then, "I've worked for everything I have." Or, "The world is tough and you got to toughen up too." Inside, you'll find tools that are well used, maybe even overused. Some are outdated or worn beyond their season, but still clutched tightly out of habit. These might look like charm, which is used to disarm or distract, but now comes off as controlling. Or intimidation, which once was a way to protect yourself and now creates distance and conflict. Then martyrdom, giving everything maybe a little too dramatically, but now is leading to burnout and resentment. These tools did work at one point, but now they need replacing or rest. The Grindstone Kit reminds us that resilience is powerful, but healing, reflection, and growth are just as essential. Next up is the lone hammer, or just one tool. This toolbox is a toolbox of survival. It holds one tool, one approach, used over and over because life has never offered the luxury of options. When all you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail, and it's not about finesse. It's about force, about pushing through, muscling past, doing whatever it takes to survive. This person might say things like, every time I turn around, there's another hardship. Or people are out for themselves and you just have to figure out how to get past them. Or I'm alone in this and I have to figure it out all by myself. The hammer might show up as anger, like a burst of power to push back or protect. Or people-pleasing, it's the only tool that ever seemed to keep the peace. Or avoidance, if I don't deal with it, maybe it'll go away. Or then perfectionism, control is a way to stay safe. The hammer is not a bad tool. Sometimes it is exactly what is needed, and other times it's incomplete for our need. It's not built for everybody or everything, just like you wouldn't use a sledgehammer to repair a watch. Some life situations call for a different kind of touch, maybe a smaller hammer. The lone hammer is a sign of resilience, but is also a call to add more tools to the box because survival is only the first chapter. Wholeness asks for more. Now let's look at the sealed case, or the unopened and hidden. This toolbox is tucked away in the attic of the heart, sealed, dusty, and long untouched. It's there, but buried deep. Sometimes it's hidden by fear or pain. Other times it's sealed shut by denial, shame, or simply never having had a safe chance to open it. The person carrying this toolbox might say things like, I have no idea what you're talking about. There are no tools for life. Or, only certain people get that kind of help. The rest of us just have to figure it out. And then finally, tools? That's just not something my family ever talked about. Inside this toolbox, the tools are passed down, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unconsciously, from our family of origin, which is our FOO, F-O-O, family of origin. It gives us a little levity as we look at things that are difficult. So it can come from our family of origin, our culture, community, faith traditions, and trauma. But the toolbox might feel too heavy to open, too overwhelming, too unfamiliar. You might find yourself asking, who packed this toolbox for me? Maybe it was shaped by a family who avoided hard conversations, a culture that valued silence or shame over support, a traumatic experience or experiences that made emotional survival the only focus, a faith community that either nurtured or neglected your growth. For example, I knew a child who was pretty brave. She walked into a church alone at the age of 8, and she asked for help. She told them, I want to go to church, but I only have one parent, and he doesn't go to church, and he won't take me. This church had the resources to be sure that that little girl was picked up on Sunday and went to church for many years. Another person might grow up being forced to attend church and now avoids it completely because freedom looks like walking away. This toolbox exists, but until it's open, the tools can't be understood, questioned, or used. The sealed case reminds us that we all carry a toolbox, whether we know it or not, and sometimes the hardest work is daring to lift the lid. So we've talked about some different types of toolboxes, how and why they function, and what they may sound like in our heads. Now let's take a few minutes to address what I mean by tools. Tools are what we carry inside us, our inner resources, emotional tools, and life strategies you bring into adulthood, relationships, work, and faith. Emotional tools are what we use to help us identify the process and know what to do with our emotions and the emotions of others. There are no good or bad emotions. It's what we do with what we feel that will either be helpful or hurtful. Life strategies are things that we say to ourselves and the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of our emotions, relationships, our world, and to cope to get through. Not everyone is equipped equally, as we discussed, and the different types of toolboxes we carry. I can't cover every emotion or life strategy today, but I would like to talk about a few of the most typical emotions and strategies that come from forming our toolboxes and our tools. One of the first and most valuable tools, in my opinion, is that of self-awareness. Many people are not very aware of things in their lives, for instance, everyday things at home, work, the grocery store, casual or deep relationships, to name only a few. For example, sometimes people only become aware when they hit the wall. And what I mean by that is they're just going on in their life every day as normal, and then something comes up and it's unexpected and they hit it and they're stunned and they don't know what to do. It's like hitting a wall. And their family or friends may tell them, "Didn't you see the door 2 feet that way to the left?" And they're like, "No, I didn't even know there was a door." And this is what I mean by not being aware generally, which means we're not self-aware. Next up is sad, mad, and bad. These are different and often used together to help us cope. These three are individual things, but are often hanging out together, especially the first two, as sad and mad are emotions, and mad is always covering sad. But bad is a behavior, like our words and our actions, and sometimes, over time, that can become a character quality or a label for some people. An example of sad, mad, and bad would be a situation where there's a child playing and building blocks. He has built a huge tower, and he's pretty proud of himself. One of his siblings come into the room and knocks the whole tower over. He's probably about 4 or 5, and he just gets mad, and he starts crying and yelling, maybe name-calling, throwing blocks, and then a parent comes into the room and says something like this: "What's going on here? You two just settle down. What happened? Don't throw things." And then the one who knocked down the tower said, "He yelled at me and threw blocks at me." And then the parent says, "Don't throw blocks at your brother, and we don't yell at each other." All the while, the parent is yelling at the child. So in a very age-appropriate way, what this little boy will learn is it's okay to yell if you're big. So when I get big, I'm going to yell. Now, let me tell the story a different way. So it's the same scenario. There's a little boy. He's been building his blocks. He's about 4 or 5. His brother comes in and he knocks down this tower that he's very proud of. He gets mad. He begins to yell and scream, and he throws blocks at his brothers. This time the mom comes in and she says to her sons, "Boys, let's just calm down. I want you both to stop yelling and crying if you can, and sit down and let's breathe together." And then she says to her sons, "What really happened here?" And the boy who got hit in the head with a block says, "He hit me with a block and he's yelling at me." And then mom says, "Okay, thank you for telling me that." And she turns to her other son and says, "What happened here?" And he said, "I was building a tower of blocks and it got really tall. It was taller than me. And he came in and he knocked them all down. And it made me so mad. And I just yelled at him and I just picked one up and threw it at him. I was just so mad." And mom says, "Thanks for telling me." And then she says to her sons, "When we get mad, we're really sad. So what were you sad about?" And the little boy said, "I don't know." And then she says, "I think you were sad because your tower of blocks got knocked down." And to the other one, "I think you were sad because he hit you with a block and it hurt." In this different scenario, both kids will learn that I have feelings, and mad's not the only one, and bad's not the only thing I have. I have sad here, and mom is pointing out that sad is part of what I'm feeling. All three things are labeled. The identification that you're really sad because you got hit with a block, or your tower of blocks were knocked down. Your work was demolished. Oh, of course a little kid's going to be sad. But mad comes so quickly to cover that sad. And nobody really ever talks to us about the sad behind the mad. Usually what's focused on is the behavior. Don't throw blocks. Don't yell at your brother. And you don't knock down your brother's blocks. That could be good instruction, but how it's delivered will make the difference in what each of the boys learn. To say, I hear that you were really sad, those blocks got knocked down, and then you got really mad and you yelled and you threw blocks. This is not the best way to resolve this with your brother. And to the other boy, for whatever reason, you thought it was a good idea to knock down those blocks, and you didn't get sad or mad until you got hit with one of them, which is not okay. What could be learned from this scenario is that the mom helped them identify beyond just bad behavior, that they were mad because they were sad. One got a little tower knocked down, the other one got hit with a block. Neither thing is okay, but it wasn't just focused on the behavior. She helps them see why they had these explosions of anger towards the other one. And what we want to teach our children is that there's more than just the behavior. There's the mad, and what's behind the mad? The sad. So identifying feelings, teaching self-awareness early on, and also the lesson towards the behavior part of things. What we do with what we feel can be helpful or hurtful, and in this case, they both had behavior that was hurtful towards each other. Next up is anxiety and fear, two emotions most everyone has experienced, but not always equally. Based on what we have in our toolbox, we may be able to manage our anxiety or fear. But if we don't have the right tools, they can become crippling emotions, even paralyzing, and we don't know what to do. Here's an example I think most everybody can relate to, even if you haven't had this experience. But we're going to talk about bedtime. And this little person is about 3, and they're being put to bed. And parents are in the living room, and they come running out. I'm afraid there's monsters in my bedroom. And the parents say, you're not afraid, you're tired. Go back to bed. And the child cries and insists that they're afraid. And the parents battle it out. You're not afraid, you're tired, go to bed. And they put them back in bed and tell them, go to sleep and stay there. A different experience and a different lesson might be, the child comes down the hallway, I'm afraid, there's monsters in my room. And the parents are exasperated, and they don't want to do it, but they get up and they go in and they say, sit on the edge of your bed. I'm going to look under your bed, and I don't see any monsters. Now you come down beside me and look too. There's no monsters under the bed. What's there? And the little one says, my toys and clothes. And the parent said, that's right. Now I'm going to look in the closet first, and then you'll come and look too. And the parent looks in the closet, and there's no monsters. And then has the little child come over and say, look in the closet, and there's no monsters there either. They take that child, they put them back in the bed, and they say, there are no monsters in here. You are safe. Now we need you to go to sleep. It's bedtime. Now, I'm not going to say that on the first try, every child will stay there. Some will come out and try again. But if the parents consistently say, there are no monsters, and let me show you, they're validating that the child is afraid, even if we all know there's a diversion to get out of going to bed. But sometimes they really are afraid. Instead of telling them, no, you're not afraid, you're tired, which the lesson there is learned is don't trust what you feel, and don't tell, because apparently it's not okay to say I'm afraid. If we say, okay, I hear you're afraid inside our head, and we take them down to their room and show them there's nothing to be afraid of, they will learn that their voice is heard, but also my parents have boundaries and they're not falling for my shenanigans. So fear and anxiety can build over time, and if we don't have the tools, that's how they become monsters inside of us, sometimes crippling, sometimes paralyzing. Some people have different anxiety issues, and we're not talking about the depths of that here. We're just talking about a general example around these two emotions that most of us have experienced at some point in our life. We just need the right tools to be able to identify them for what they are and what they are not. So finally, we're going to talk about one of my favorite tools. And so if you imagine, we have this toolbox, and I like to tell my clients, if you've ever seen carpenters on a job site, they all seem to have a tool belt around. So there's a box of tools, but they wear this belt. I think they're putting the most used ones and the ones that are most helpful to them on those belts. So in my opinion and my experience, one of the first tools I'm going to always have on my tool belt is the tool of distinction, knowing what's yours and what's not. This tool helps us to sort things out when life seems emotionally tangled. It's like a mental or emotional pair of glasses, bringing clarity to what we're feeling, thinking, and reacting to. A lot of times when we're overwhelmed or confused, we ask ourselves questions like, what is going on with me right now? Why am I feeling this? And what is this feeling? Or what do I do with all of this? The tool of distinction helps us to slow down, separate things out, because not everything we're feeling or thinking is actually ours to carry. It can help us notice things like, this feeling I'm having, it's really not mine, or I'm absorbing someone else's stress. Or is this thought a thought I believe or something I was taught to believe? Am I reacting to the now or something from the past? We all build our emotional toolboxes over time, from family, culture, experiences, faith, and even trauma. So there's no one-size-fits-all way to process emotions. But with this tool of distinction, we begin to see what is actually going on inside of us and around us. Distinction helps us notice the difference between thoughts and feelings, what's ours to manage and what belongs to someone else, what tools we already have to handle the moment, and which tools we might need to develop. In this first step, responding rather than reacting, and it's a practice, not perfection. Our tools can be learned or swapped. Just because you start with one tool doesn't mean you have to keep using it. We can retire some completely or put some on the shelf. Like, not all survival tools need to be used every day, but we don't want to throw them all away. We might want to keep some on a shelf for a time in life when we need them. Like when there's natural disasters or there's increased stressors in our life, we'll need some of those survival tools, but we don't want to operate from them every day. We can get stuck in life by trying to use the same old tools for every situation, but most often when people find things aren't working the way they used to or the way they want to experience life, they'll look around and they'll look to someone and see what they're doing. And if they deem that as a successful thing, they'll try that themselves, but find out very often that it may or may not work. So life ends up being a series of trial and error, not really the best tools for a peaceful life. Also, we can expand our toolkit. When we figure out that the situation doesn't need a hammer or whatever tool we're trying to use on it, then there's the option of exploring and looking for what is needed, seeking help from a trusted parent, a friend, a mentor, a professional counselor, or others can help us learn to practice and acquire new tools for life. So let's take a brief look at making space for new tools. We can learn new ways through learning, through experiences, and seeking help from experts like a professional counselor, a trusted friend, a parent, a mentor, and our own life experiences and or faith. God does not shame us about our tools. He teaches us how to use them wisely or lets us trade them in, so to speak, for what we need. An example of other tools that we might be in need of or might need to add to our toolbox are things like learning to build self-awareness, learning to sit in silence for reflection. That might sound like, why am I doing this in this situation? Or practicing gratitude or forgiveness, learning about boundaries, and then setting healthy boundaries, or prayer. Growth is maintenance. Your toolbox evolves and changes as you do. It is your choice. Your toolbox and your tools are not your value or identity. And finally, the questions you might want to think about is, what tools do I have? Which ones may I be overusing? What's missing in my toolbox? And or what new tools do I need? So what's in your toolbox? And how did it get there? Maybe it's time to dust off your old toolbox and see if it still fits in your life. Or maybe it's time to learn something new. Remember, your toolbox does not define your worth. It tells your story, and it can grow and change just like you. Thanks for spending time with me today as we open the metaphor of the toolbox. Whether it's shiny, battered, overflowing, or nearly empty, remember you're not stuck. Until next time, may you be kind to your heart, clear in your mind, and grounded in your purpose. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for tuning in to Heart, Mind, and Purpose with Dawn Hill. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing and leaving a review to help others find us. You can learn more about the show by visiting dawnmariehill.com and click on the tab that says Heart, Mind, and Purpose. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.